New York City never truly sleeps, but past midnight, even the busiest streets start to quiet down. It was 11:50 p.m. and Ethan was exhausted after a long shift at work. He hurried down the stairs into the subway station, the cold air of the underground wrapping around him like an invisible hand. The platform was nearly empty, just a few late-night commuters scattered along the benches. At the far end, standing near the dim glow of a flickering light, was a woman in black. She stood motionless, her face hidden by her long, dark hair. The train arrived with a low, screeching groan. Ethan stepped inside the last car, hoping for some peace on the way home. The car was completely empty. He sat by the window, put on his headphones, and tried to relax. As the train pulled away, the tunnel's darkness swallowed them whole. His reflection flickered on the glass, distorted by the dim lighting inside the car. That's when he noticed something strange. There was someone else in the reflection. A chill ran down his spine. Slowly, cautiously, he turned his head. At the far end of the car, in the shadows where the overhead lights barely reached, the woman in black was sitting. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. She hadn't been there when he got on, had she? She sat completely still, head lowered, her long hair shifting slightly, as if moving in water. The train pulled into 14th Street Station. The doors opened with a tired chime. Ethan thought about getting off. Something felt wrong. But no one boarded, no one left, and the woman remained motionless. The train doors slid shut, and they plunged into the darkness of the next tunnel. Suddenly, the lights flickered just for a second, and in that brief moment, Ethan saw her face, or rather, the absence of one. Where her eyes should have been, there was only black emptiness, like a bottomless void staring back at him. A whisper echoed through the car, though he couldn't make out the words. A rush of cold air brushed his skin. She was breathing on him. Heart pounding, Ethan shot to his feet and bolted for the doors. The train screeched into 34th Street Station. As soon as the doors opened, he stumbled onto the platform, gasping for breath. He turned back, expecting to see the woman still sitting there, but she was gone, and in her place, someone else was sitting. Himself. His own reflection sat inside the train, staring back at him. The doors slid shut, and the train vanished into the darkness. Ethan stood frozen on the platform, heart hammering against his ribs. The subway station was eerily quiet, the fluorescent lights flickering above him. His mind raced. Did I imagine that? Was I just exhausted? But the feeling lingered, like something was still watching him. The platform was nearly empty, except for a homeless man slumped in the corner. Desperate for some validation of what he'd just seen, Ethan approached him. "Hey, did you see that? The last train?" His voice was shaky. The man lifted his head, revealing wide, frightened eyes. His voice was a hoarse whisper. "You saw her too, huh?" Ethan's stomach twisted. The man pointed towards the tunnel where the train had disappeared. "She waits in the last car. Always. But she ain't real, man. She's a shadow, a ghost." Ethan swallowed hard. "Who is she?" The man shuddered. "Some say she was left behind when they built the tunnels. Some say she's looking for someone to take her place." Ethan backed away. He didn't want to hear anymore. This isn't real. It can't be. But deep down, he already knew the truth. Because when he glanced at the dark tunnel again, two faint red lights, like eyes, were staring back at him. Ethan couldn't sleep that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her face, or rather, the lack of one. By morning, he convinced himself it had been a trick of the light, a hallucination from exhaustion. But the next night, curiosity won over fear. He went back. The same station, the same time, the same last train. When the door slid open, he hesitated, his heart screaming at him to turn around, but he stepped inside. The train was mostly empty, except for a few scattered passengers. No sign of her. Ethan exhaled in relief. Maybe it really was all in my head. Then the lights flickered, and when they came back on, she was there, sitting in the exact same spot as before, only this time she was facing him. He couldn't move. He couldn't breathe. The train entered a tunnel, and everything went dark. Then, in the blackness, a whisper, closer than before. "You shouldn't have come back." Ethan's pulse pounded in his ears. The train wasn't stopping. Station after station blurred past, but the doors never opened. And the woman, she was getting closer. He blinked, and suddenly she was 2 seats away. He blinked again, 1 seat away. Her black, empty eyes locked onto his. The train lights shattered. Ethan screamed. Everything went dark. The train screeched, the sound of metal twisting and groaning. He could feel something cold crawling over his skin, pulling him down. Then, silence. When Ethan opened his eyes, he was sitting in the subway car. The train was moving. He turned his head and saw himself sitting across from him. His reflection smiled. The train pulled into the next station. The doors opened. People got on, but they didn't see him, because Ethan wasn't there anymore. He was part of the train now, and the woman in black was still waiting for the next passenger.